Welcome everyone to this video about ableism. Something a bit different, as it is not directly about my autism, but a form of discrimination I wish to draw attention to. I am not under the impression that I will see a significant change in my lifetime. However, I wish to contribute my part by sharing my views, experiences with those who watch this video. At the end of the video, I also have a message to those who are currently fighting to correct other social issues. As always, these are my opinions, views and experiences, and mine alone. Let's start with a short introduction for those who do not know me yet. I would highly recommend you to check out the playlist Let's Talk Autism, Skitty and Me. I will leave a link to it in the description. I'd like to give you a bit of background information about myself and my credentials regarding my efforts to contribute to change in the past. I am born in 1980 and I'm currently 40 years old. I have been adopted from Indonesia at an early age. I grew up in a mostly white community in a small city about 30 minutes driving away from Amsterdam. I grew up with caring and loving parents who tried their best to give me a good childhood. But because autism was not a thing back then, my upbringing was not the smoothest and there were regular conflicts. I did the MAVO and HAVO but failed 2 attempts to finish my follow-up studies. The first attempt was for government management and the second one was for teacher English. How I experienced my entire life at school is something I will discuss in a later video. I ended up working as a male prostitute for men and tried to play my part in normalizing sex work in general. For those who like to dig up old stuff, I've given interviews in the first season of BNN's Spuiten en Slikken on the topic and have given several interviews for late night television in those days. More on this episode of my life also in a future video. But I mention this to show you that I have always been active in trying to get things out in the open and have serviced men from all levels of society around the globe. From the French major who had won his seat by closing gay bars in his city, but came to Amsterdam and hired me, to the man who was born in a high caste of Indian society and who delighted into emotionally and physically abusing his servants. I have worked as a party manager for several years, being responsible for several hundreds of guests plus personnel, tried my hands at sales in a store, and finally discovered I was also pretty good as a technical service desk agent and answering phone calls in general. I have sheltered and guided those in need and was the end responsible of a team that led an online roleplay and gaming community for more than 10 years, in which I observed both group mechanics as well as community building. I am better with social things online than I am in real life. Due to my back and then unknown autism, things spun out of control and I became a living meme. About a year ago I was officially diagnosed as a level 1 autist with mild recurring depressions, upon which I received a short course in psychoeducation and got my cat Skitty. But am still waiting for the rest of the needed support and mental health from the mental profession, as there are long waiting lists and messing things up is not uncommon there when you're transferring files apparently. I have seen and experienced both the good and the bad side of mankind. I do not shun the unpopular opinion, nor speaking out the honest but painful truth, as I tend to lack a filter when it comes to topics where I am passionate about. In my early adulthood I supported the Dutch Communist Party and later became active in order to empower sex workers and get it out of the shadows and more into the open. And now that I know that I am autistic, there is a whole new front opening up for me to fight against, which I never realized even existed before, namely ableism. To quote, ableism is discrimination and social prejudice against people with disabilities or who are perceived to have disabilities. Ableism characterizes persons as defined by their disability and as inferior to the non-disabled. End quote. And that was the simple explanation out of Google. Ableism is a form of discrimination with all its aspects, from making fun about disabled in jokes, mocking people with disabilities, assumptions made about what they can and cannot do based upon their disability, and not looking at a person's actual abilities, wants and desires. Our society designed for the abled and often disregarding the disabled. People arguing your disability cause you don't look like one on first glance, and so on and so on. Replace the variations of the word disability are used for the word race or gender, and half the world would start protesting, but for the disabled, hardly anyone stands up. And let's face it, we live in an ableist society. Our educational programs are designed for neurotypical children, and those who do not fit in either need to catch up or drop out. We already perceive students that learn better by doing rather than learning from a book as less intelligent and smart. And it's only in the last 15 to 20 years that we have started to make our society wheelchair friendly. Public and private spaces, services, education, social work, social standards, the work environment are all built and designed to serve the standard people, and therefore automatically trying to exclude people with various disabilities. The disabled are only disabled unless they get the chance to become able. An example I heard on a TikTok: someone who has bad eyes is disabled, but by putting on glasses he or she suddenly is able and can fully function in society. I have encountered ableism a fair few times in my lifetime without even realizing what it is. Nor did my surroundings at that time. Being told how I behaved was wrong and forced to suppress my autistic tendencies because it was not normal. If I was not acting my age, people felt embarrassed or insulted, or I was not polite, resulting in me heavily masking and becoming opportune and reckless in my autistic behavior. Because our educational system on the primary school was not designed for autistic people, I got behind on things such as reading, which my parents helped overcome by practicing with me. Fortunately, the teachers on the MAVO and later the HAVO figured out that they best let me work ahead in the book and allow me to pay less attention to what they said in class, so I could learn it my own way. And because I was and am very childish in my behavior, and due to my autism, as well as being colored, my capacities to learn and my intelligence was highly underestimated, making me waste time on education below my capacities. And then there is the perceived disabilities. For example, those that believe people with autism are not able to work, have friends, or hold relationships, to the point that there are those who feel we should not participate within society or exist at all. Ableism is one of the last forms of discrimination that needs to be addressed. It's a form of discrimination that crosses the boundaries of race, religion, sexuality, and gender. A form of discrimination fueled from a lack of understanding and perceived inferiority of the disabled and the perceived superiority of society's structure as it currently is. In order to change the ableist society we live in, society first needs to acknowledge the fact that they are in fact ableist. It needs to re-evaluate the way we all are forced by social standards to be social with making eye contact, shaking hands at greetings, to getting bonus points at school, whether you are social with your team or not. The key to solving ableism is to listen to our opinions and ideas about our needs rather than assuming and thinking for us. But also listening and adjusting faster to modern science. We already know that loud noises, the abundance of bright light is not healthy. And yet many office buildings stick to it out of policy. But it would not only be more healthy for the abled, but it would help a lot for autistic people who have sensory issues, enabling them in the process. Letting go of the forced social expectations of politeness and interacting, such as the need to shake hands and look people in the eyes. And why, you might ask? We are just a small group, you say. And yes, that is true. If not for the disabled, then maybe because if a larger amount of us become able to function more and better in society, then we cost society a lot less. Or maybe even for yourself. Because the amount of burnout and depressions in our society is gradually on the rise for the last years. And that is not because current society is so perfect. If normal people get stressed out and depressed by how society functions, imagine what it can mean for a disabled. In order to change society, society needs to be convinced to change. The vast majority needs to realize it is off for the better if they change their perception and adjust their behavior. Discrimination starts with a funny joke at the expense of another person's color, gender, religion, sexuality, or disability, and soon escalates into a lesser view of another to outright discrimination in the end. It means we need to accept that the easy way out might not be the lasting solution or even the right thing to do. To name an example, why do we need to teach our girls to protect themselves? And do we not teach the boys to respect women and consent and actually change society by removing the stereotypical social expectations for boys and girls? Or an example more closer to home, why fight a symbol of slavery, Zwarte Piet, rather than fight for an open and honest history lesson at school, so the next generation will see Zwarte Piet as a reminder of the horrors of slavery, so we do not forget, rather than remove it from view, so we can all just forget about the past. You do not change anyone's opinion or views by removing a symbol, by forcing change through aggressive rhetoric, calling the other racist and fighting them with all your might. The current aggression and mostly intolerance towards the other side, regardless of which side in which discussion and conflict, is what stands in the way of actual change. Conflict and aggression are two very bad methods when it comes to bringing change in another person's opinion. A cynical tone and treating the other as if he or she is a complete moron will not only make the other deaf to your worth and arguments, but also closes your mind from their words and arguments. Aggression and anger leads to more aggression and anger, and not to a change of mind in anyone's head. The ones who are fighting for change need to realize that you have a message you wish the other to hear, listen to, and think about. That is not something achieved with aggression or force in action or word. It is achieved by careful educating, informing, and showing them the errors of their way in order to convince them that you were right and they need to adjust their perception. And yes, every form of discrimination, whether that be race, gender, religion, sexuality or disability needs to be fought against with peaceful protest, influencing our politicians, education and the court of law if so needed. The aggressive gatekeeping and sometimes literal fighting, rioting and rebelling I see in current protests will not match eventual goal of equality and equal treatment. And with that, I wish to end this video. If you liked it, found it informative or just interesting, consider to like, subscribe and share this video with others. Again, thank you for watching and hope to see you soon.